Hey, hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I see we've got a few folks out there here at the top of the hour. So, want to thank you all for joining us. I will give it about a minute and a half still to let anybody else join us that may be coming in late. We are super excited to have SIPPIO on the call today, and yeah, looking forward to talking with you all about E911 emergency and how SIPPIO integrates with that. But we will give it another minute and some change here and let everyone joining us. So feel free to hang out until then. I will go ahead and mention that if you do have questions throughout today's webinar, you can ask those in the Q&A box on the right side. So feel free to ask any questions that you have there. I will either answer them as we go, or we will wait towards the end of the webinar and answer them at that time as well. But yeah, again, just thank you all for joining, and we'll get started here in about a minute. Well, I'm not seeing anyone else join. I think we're kind of holding steady at our current number. So I think it's okay for us to go ahead and get started. So again, just want to thank you all for joining us this morning. We've got SIPPIO on to discuss E911 integrations with Teams Voice and SIPPIO. So before I take it over to the SIPPIO team, I just wanted to give a quick introduction. So my name is Clint Boyleston, account executive here at eGroup. And for those of you unaware of who eGroup is, we are an IT solutions provider. We've been in business for over 20 years. We are a gold partner with Microsoft, and we really, focus our attention today with Microsoft services around helping organizations secure their modern workplace digital footprint. So some of the collaboration functionalities and Teams resources that we use to help our organizations streamline business processes and really kind of grow efficiency throughout the organization. Really have a heavy focus making sure we're helping you guys continue to grow efficiency and also provide security across all the parameters of your mobile users and your overall just sort of business continuity structure and collaboration suite. Along those lines as well, we're also helping organizations with their hybrid IT strategies, helping organizations take advantage of the public cloud, specifically Microsoft Azure, when and where it makes sense from both an economics perspective and a ease of use in the cloud. We are definitely helping organizations understand that and optimize their business by also leveraging private cloud technologies for their on-prem workloads that don't make quite as much sense to move up to the public cloud, whether it's just a cost, just dependencies on those workloads from an on-prem perspective. But today we're focused on Microsoft Teams, right, and helping you guys understand all of the capabilities within Microsoft Teams. So over the last 8 months or so now, we've been partnering with SIPPIO to provide a dialing service within your Teams platform and provide you with a comprehensive calling telephony plan through Teams integrations with SIPPIO. And today, we're going to be discussing with Rob Coker at SIPPIO how you can now integrate E911 capabilities within your SIPPIO environment and within your Teams Voice experience. So I'd like to welcome Rob Coker now to the call. And Rob, feel free to take it away and tell us a little bit more about yourself and the E911 capabilities at SIPPIO.
Sure. Thank you very much. So, yeah, my name is Rob Coker from SIPPIO. Been doing telecom for probably somewhere in the order of about 25 years now, working with SIPPIO for about the past year and a half. And essentially, I'm the guy that you work with when we go and do the initial onboarding. I take care of pre-sales engineering over here. And, we get a lot of questions with, a lot of vendors have some questions as far as like, how do they get started? And I walk them through the process. Throughout all this, we do get a lot of questions too about 911. How do you do it? How do you set it up? How does this whole, how does it all play into Microsoft Teams? So it's not a very difficult piece to go ahead and address, but it is very important to be able to address it. On the SIPPIO side, basically, anytime you buy a new number from our service, or if you port numbers over to our service, we have a porting team that will take the phone numbers and associate an address with them. So in a manner of static addressing, let's assume if you did absolutely nothing within Microsoft Teams other than to activate direct routing with us. At the very least, what would happen on our side, we take the addresses even down to location, room number, floor number. We can associate that information to the phone number and have that available so that when you do place an emergency call, the call will get presented to Intrado. Intrado will in turn send the call to the correct PSAP, and they will have all the correct information available to you. Now, if you want to get into doing some of the more enhanced direct routing, more of the enhanced E911 dialing functions within Teams, which I'm sure many of you do, you may want to get into some of the dynamic routing, some of the dynamic E911 setup. With that, Teams is aware of where you are within the organization and can present additional location information to the call. So let's say, for example, if you are you place an emergency call, normally think years ago prior to Teams, these phone lines were married up to a location, and it was a very static setup. There was nothing really changed. If you made a call from a business phone and you were at the business, that business line really couldn't move anywhere. So it was a very easy thing to do. Within Teams, you could be operating anywhere. As a result, you could be operating anywhere within the company. Your phone, you can, instead of being married to your phone sitting on your desk, you're actually walking around with your phone. You could be in the conference room. You could be in the courtyard. You can be in any location. So the way that it works within Microsoft Teams, by adding some additional network information about the customer location, we can associate an actual address to that location. And when I say an address, I don't want to get it confused with like an IP address. I'm talking about we can associate like a street address or even additional location information to an IP address or range of IP addresses, so that when you make an emergency call, we can get the call. We can present some additional information to the to Intrado so that they can see where emergency services need to be dispatched. So, looking at it from like a very high level, one of the first things you're going to need to do within your tenant system, you're going to need to define what are your trusted public IP addresses. So this is your public IP address. You know, if you go out to Google and type in what is my IP, you're going to see what that address is. Somebody who operates from home, that address is going to change and is subject to change frequently. Somebody who would be operating within an office, those numbers, those IP addresses, those public IP addresses tend to, you have them for a long time. I'd say 99% of the time. With that address, we can take an actual street address and say, well, the public IP address of 137, 135, 128.250 or whatever it is associated with 123 Main Street in any town, USA. Pulling this in, making it a little more granular, we can define additional information about the internal network on the customer side. So let's say, for example, maybe we have a small campus environment. Maybe you have three different buildings. The internal IP addresses for one building, they may be using something like a 192.168.1 address. Your second building could be using addresses like 192.168.2, and your third building 192.168.3. So within Teams, we can take additional location information and actually tag a call that says, well, if a call is coming from this private IP address, within this public IP address, on the private IP address, associate it with building 1. If the IP address is 192.168.1, associate building 1 to that and pass that information along. Same thing for building 2, building 3. Now I'm talking about a campus location with different IP addresses in different buildings. Same rule can apply with even like an office building, taller office building where you have multiple floors instead of different buildings. You can assign different IP addresses to different floors, depending upon how granular you want to get. You can take the IP addresses and assign them to different areas within the building. In addition to the IP addresses, you can, in addition to being able to associate a location to an IP address, we can also take these addresses, we can take additional information like what access point are you calling from? What network port are you calling from? Within the closet, and we can associate a physical location within the building to that access point, to that IP address range, to that port on the switch. So now with that, you could really be anywhere within the building, pick up the call, pick up the phone, place an emergency call, and when that call is made on Teams, it's going to first look at, do I trust the public address? It will do a quick lookup and say, yes, I do trust the public IP address. Let's look at the internal addresses to see if I recognize it. If it has an internal IP address which is recognized, we have a location associated with it. Teams will put together a little packet of information which is known as your PIDFlow data. PIDFlow is acronym, stands for Presence Information Data Format Location Object. It's a lot easier probably just to remember it as PIDFlow. More importantly is to know what it is. It's really nothing more than an XML data packet that is paired up with your phone call, and within that packet it contains the building address, street address, latitude, longitude, additional information associated with the location of that call. So now you could be anywhere in your building, call emergency services, 911, does a lookup, trusts the internal address, trusts the external address, takes the PIDFlow information, and we pass the call out to Intrado. Intrado will look at the PIDFlow information and will route it to the appropriate PSAP, so that, or the public safety answering point. Essentially, think of it like, this is where your calls go when you dial 911. It'll route the call to the appropriate PSAP. They get the call and can dispatch emergency services to you. Let's see, what else can I tell you about this? Some other reasons why you would want to be enabling this E911 within your organization. You do want to be compliant with some laws that are out there regarding the handling of E911. So let's say, for example, we have Carey's law. Rather than going into like a big dissertation about Carey's law, in summary, what it's all about is to be compliant with Carey's law and E911 services, you need to make sure that one does not need to dial any special access code prior to actually calling 911. So for example, if I want to make an emergency call, I need to be able to go within my Teams client, or if I have a hard phone, pick up that phone and just dial 911. If you have to dial some kind of prefix digit before that, you're not compliant with Carey's law, and you can get into some trouble for that. Another component to this, another law is called Ray Baum's Act. Some people, they look at Ray, they hear of Ray Baum's and they think, okay, well, Carey's law is about a person. Ray Baum's, maybe I don't know who that person is. Ray Baum's is not a person. Ray Baum stands for, that's another acronym, Repack Airwaves Yielding Better Access for Users of Modern Services. Quite a mouthful, probably a lot easier just to remember it as Ray Baum's Act. What you need to know about Ray Baum's Act is when somebody makes an emergency call, it's up to you to have the system configured so that you can send additional critical information, such as street address, building number, floor number, location on the floor, any of this information. This information should be contained within your teams. You can get it all configured in there. When one makes a call, to be compliant with Ray Baum's Act is to ensure that you're making sure that address and location information is being passed over to the PSAP. So all of this sounds like it works all well and good and it's fine when you're within the office. But let's just say, for example, you're outside of the office. You have Teams on your phone. Maybe you stepped out, you went to a local coffee shop. Something happens, you call 911. So the question is, what happens in that case? Understanding the local coffee shop, they are not part of your Teams tenant. You do not have them configured up as a trusted public IP address. You know absolutely nothing about their internal structure. So what happens with the call? Well, on the SIPPIO side, when you pass the call over to us, we will and do take this call and we still pass it over to Intrado. Now, if you have Teams configured to send an address, and if you are placing a call from an unknown network location, at that point, Teams says, well, I don't have any information to send. There is no trusted public IP address. In a case like that, Intrado takes the call and will first pass it over to an ECC or an emergency call center. Basically what happens at an emergency call center, they will pre-qualify the call and say, what is the location? Where are you calling from? You simply just have to tell them where it is you're calling from. At that point, the ECC will then take the call and pass it over to a PSAP, who is, of course, the end organization that will be taking your call and deciding if they need to dispatch fire, police, ambulance, some sort of emergency first responder service. In a nutshell, that's about everything I could think off of the top of my head. Clinton, do you have anything you want to add or anything you'd like to say?
Thanks, Rob. Just looking at the Q&A, I'm not seeing anything coming in on that side. So I think we may be good from that perspective. You know, I would say while we've got a little bit of time here, Rob, are there any updates or you know, specific I guess new capabilities besides the E911 stuff that SIPPIO kind of has on the roadmap, and anything that would be worth sharing?
As far as any kind of updates within our own environment, we do have some enhancements. For some of you that may not know what SIPPIO is and what we do, we do provide calling through a direct routing solution. We have it on a platform which is ready to deploy. Instead of trying to build it all yourself, we have a very nice model where you can come in and inside of 10, 15 minutes, activate with us. We can enable direct routing calling within your organization. Some newer things that we have happening on our end. We just recently pushed out some updates to our voice panel, which has some additional enhanced security to ensure that only the right people are getting in to get into your tenant. For those that have been who've used and have worked with direct routing, more often than not, people use PowerShell to do a lot of this configuration. What SIPPIO does, and one of our items of pride and joy that we have is this voice panel. Using this, we can get a connection going from your customer tenant to SIPPIO and inside of 10 minutes. Ordering phone numbers from us, you can port numbers to us. You can get new numbers from us. We operate in over 60 countries around the world. We have a backup solution where at present we have six global redundant locations where if, God forbid, if Microsoft does have some sort of an issue where an entire Azure data center region goes offline, we have a multitude of other Microsoft Azure data regions that our solution sits in. It's 100% within Azure. If one of those regions happens to go down, we do have backups to fail over to the other regions. There's no need to come in here and flip a switch and tell it to go to a backup. The calls will just fail over and go there. This happens automatically within about 30 seconds of an Azure data center failure. Within our panel itself, rather than doing PowerShell, rather than putting the onus upon you to do a lot of research and training, understand in depth how to use PowerShell to do this, it can be a very confusing task to try to take on. We just make it so that with a few clicks of the mouse, you can use either our application or we have a web interface where you can log in, activate within Teams, not need to know any PowerShell, and you can be up and running. One of the more recent updates that we put into our panel was the capability to select from whatever unused phone numbers, what other unused phone numbers you have in your inventory, rather than have you need to maintain a secondary list to just keep track of what all your numbers are. We pull all this right into Teams for you. Outside of SIPPIO, if you were not using us and you were doing your own direct routing solution, you would have to rely upon keeping track of a couple of Excel spreadsheets, trying to track where all these numbers are. That all goes away. We take it on within our panel and make it easy for you to look up what other phone numbers you have unused, and we we take those phone numbers, make them available to you so that you can associate it to a user with a simple drop-down selection. We do have some other cool features coming out to our voice panel coming up pretty soon. We have additional regions that we're going to be going live with. Really, at this time, I can't say which regions, but we're currently operating in 6, but we do have some more coming up on the horizon. So yeah, this is where we are, Clinton.
Well, great. I appreciate it, Rob, and thanks for the updates. I think that's super helpful for all of our attendees here today. So really just want to thank everyone for joining us and thank Rob and the SIPPIO team for coming on and talking with our guests this morning. So appreciate everyone for joining in and supporting eGroup's Teams Tuesday event. You will be getting a note from Leanne Thomas on our team with the recording from today's webinar, along with next steps if you'd like to engage with Rob or myself to talk about this E91 integration within your team's voice environment and with SIPPIO as well. So again, thanks, Rob, for joining us, and thank you all for supporting Teams Tuesday, and we'll look forward to seeing you here in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Clinton. Thank you, everybody.